Hello and welcome to this Scriptcase Best Practices When Developing video. My name is Jamie and I am your host today, showing you the best ways to start your project and of course to develop within the Scriptcase environment. So you will see I have split this up into 4 sections. And we will be starting with data modeling in Scriptcase, which is essentially the bones of your project. Of course, Scriptcase is data centric, so your data is very important, or data is super important to the development of your project. So let's have a look at some tips that I have prepared for you. So here you'll see I have prepared a MySQL database for you, and this is of course within the MySQL workbench. Now here it is important that I stress the fact of adopting a suitable pattern. This for, of course, super efficiency and consistency within your code. If it's all mumble jumbled, a big fat mess, then of course, that's what your end result product will be. Ideally, you want to ensure that you have specific patterns in place. And that is, of course, some of those principles that we rely on for data modeling. So it's important here to use lowercase and when possible, singular table names, always keeping them neat and tight. As an example here, we have products. Okay, and of course I could, instead of having products, have products. And using capital letters is not really good practice for your database or your applications later on within Scriptcase. Use lowercase. This way everything will look nice and clean, will be easy to understand, and at the same time relatable. So that is very important. So the next important point is here, prefixes for your fields. Okay, keep them unique. So here, for instance, we have product underscore ID, not ID. If I just had ID in all of my tables here, then when I'm selecting them, well, that's a big fat mess, and that becomes more complicated. One, for my code. Secondly, for knowing which ID is which. Have them clearly identified across your entire database. It is super important. Having this defined within your initial pattern will make a massive difference. Okay, this of course also for handling many-to-many relationships. For instance, here we have some foreign keys. I have here main underscore image underscore ID. I have here also the category underscore ID. So I can identify that I know this is the ID for categories, as well as then here we have the ID or subcategory ID. And we can identify this straight away. One, it will make your development life so much easier. Secondly, as you of course create your platform, it will also become easier. Maintenance later will become easier. It will all become easier. Okay, so in the case of weak entities, it's very important to, of course, have a naming convention that indicates its dependency. So in this case, here I'm indicating again the main underscore image ID, category underscore ID. So these are very important. And if we have these IDs, having your database all set up and ready to go. And this one is not entirely perfect yet, as you for sure notice, but it's nearly there. Okay, so it gives you a very good idea of how you need to, one, create your database. Now, it's important also to add indexes. Okay, so that of course will help with your selects and speed things up for you. And at the same time, it's also important to consider views for your data. And then again, this can make your development life much simpler. So that is it for data modeling. And then the next part we have now is then Scriptcase backup, update, and productivity tools. And well, there's quite a bit in this one, isn't there? And there's, of course, much more that I could share. But let's have a look and, well, start off. Okay, so in Scriptcase, I'm going to go ahead and log in here and we can start to then have a look at backups, updates, and what are some productivity tools that we have within Scriptcase and the best ways for you to use them. So I'm just logging in now, and of course I have an update here now. Now I could go ahead and update Scriptcase now, but one thing you may want to do is open up your Internet Explorer here, your File Explorer, or whatever you want to call it, because we all have different names for these things, right? And if I come here to my Windows, it would be then in my Program Files folder, and then here I have my NetMake folder. Now this folder is the entire copy of Scriptcase. This is the hosting environment that you run Scriptcase to view it and access it and use it. Now the database is not typically stored within your project, so that will depend if you are using MySQLite, and there you may store it within there. Otherwise, you will more than likely be storing it on your actual database. So that will probably be a server somewhere, or maybe even a local WAMP environment. That could also be. But otherwise, this is your Scriptcase environment. Okay, so within here, I could go ahead and copy here my www root folder, and that would then safely store all of my projects, backups, and everything else. Because again, if I open this up, look inside this folder, we have here the app folder, a backup folder, a conf folder, and do these kind of resemble some folders? They do, don't they? They pretty much resemble your deployment. So have a think about that, have a look at these, and of course think that you have all of your backups available in here that you could then just go ahead and restore if you urgently needed to. But emergency wise, you can just come here, right click on this folder and choose to compress to a zip file. Take your own backup. Okay, that is another way of backing up your project, and I hope you do that because it's definitely a good thing to do. So, maybe I will do that after this video. You don't really want to do it, of course, when you're going to go and work on your project, because you will be making changes. Make that backup when nobody is using the environment. Okay, and talking about backups, make sure you back up your backup, because you can never have enough backups, and at the same time, always test and verify your backup. There is no point in having a backup that you cannot open. Okay? If you cannot open it, you cannot back it up. You will be stuck. So the best thing is always back up your project, create that zip file, back up your project in Scriptcase, open that backup. Make sure it opens and you are able to use it. If that is the case, then success, make another backup. Okay, so with your project backed up beautifully, of course, you would have more than likely either exported your project in here in Scriptcase, creating a backup, or you will be using here the settings, and from the settings, of course, you would then be creating a backup from here. Now, however you do it, always check it. Now, once you've created your backup within Scriptcase, it will become available to you here, as well as the download again. Backup of a backup. Okay, so Scriptcase already does one copy for you, in fact two, and then you can also go ahead and create another one. Now, talking about backups, I have one extra very important addition to add here. Now, I wasn't going to include this, but I figured, well, it's important, why not? So if I come here into my project, so if I open up here my samples project, and within this I have the possibility of creating versions. Okay, so have a version history, and as you are developing your project, your version history will possibly explode. Okay, so you can have 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 versions, who knows? Okay, so you do not want to have 50 versions in your backup. You do not. You will not open it. You are wasting your time. Do not do that. Instead of having a 500 meg or 200 meg backup of your project with 1, 2, maybe 3 versions, you will end up with gigabytes of project, maybe even a terabyte, who knows? I haven't got that far yet, but gigabytes for sure, and your backup will not open, it will not work. So it's very important to clean up your version history. Do remove versions from a project every so often. Have some project maintenance, not only within the project, but also within your development environment. Okay, so talking about the version history, the backups, and of course, keeping everything nice and clean, many of you also go ahead and import many of the projects that are available with some of the, well, the YouTube videos, right? So with some of those, you will have a nice long list of snippets that you probably won't understand or may not be any good to you, or maybe you want to create your own. Of course, come in here and clean them up. You can come in here and delete them, remove them, okay? And that way they will be removed. You can go ahead and remove them also and clean up your environment. And at the same time, that also applies to the saved security login details and so on. Okay, so if we come here to modules, security, you will then have all of those saved connections. Note, I have all of these snippets, as you just saw. I do not have all of the security profiles. I took the time and, of course, deleted them all one by one. Yeah. Okay, so you want to also keep your environment nice and clean, and those backups you then create, well, they will not have any problems. Do note, images also account for that. So if you have gigabytes of images within your Scriptcase environment for no need, maybe you will want to remove those. Okay, so backups, one last note. If you want to back up your database, it is important to maybe do that every so often because, of course, your data is your business and it is more valuable than most people give it. So let's give it the value it deserves and also back up your database. And you can do that at quite a few ways. You can create a cron job on your hosting environment. You can create an application that you ping every so often. You have so many ways of creating your own backups. Within the Scriptcase environment, you also have here the database builder. And within here, you can also create a complete dump of your database, which is essentially a backup or export. Okay, so do of course create those and take care of your projects, your environments, your default values, and everything else that you are going to be storing within Scriptcase. And talking about default values, well, it is important to also set your default values because that will make a big difference within your development. So when you are creating your applications, you will not have to go back and forth, click, 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 and make changes. You will have them all defined straight away. So the quickest way is here within settings. You have here your system settings where you have then the default view. You make some initial adjustments here for your environment. And then here you have next up your default values. And in here you can then set your logo and all of those defaults that you personally specifically like for maybe the entire environment. But of course, within a project, you also have the option, because I can set here the default values per project, and that will then also again speed up the development time and save you from having to go back in and out of an application, maybe making adjustments to buttons or whatever it is that you do to get the look that you want for the platform you are developing. Okay, so with that, we have then, of course, Express Edit. So the Express Edit is an awesome application if you need to make some adjustments to all applications, such as changing the database settings, adding a connection or changing the connection, changing the templates, setting all applications to debug mode when you perform your tests, enabling features for the mobile devices or security features, whatever it may be. You can actually make those specific adjustments here. Not all of them, of course, but quite a few of them, and the most important ones. And of course, if there is something else here that you feel that should be added, be sure to let Scriptcase know here using the chat interface. You can just reach out to somebody there and let them know, I think this would be a cool feature, or this and that would be needed on the Scriptcase environment, and it will for sure be added. Okay, so with that, we have our Express Edit, we have our default values and settings, the version history, and so forth. So those are very important for you to check out. Okay, and one extra thing I would like to point out, considering maybe, we have our database here and sometimes we want to store settings, and hard coding some of those settings is really not a good idea, especially when we want to store configuration keys, API keys, maybe default application values and settings, and all of those naggly bits that you want to maybe control within your environment. Now, in my own case, I actually like to add an extra setting here, and that is then the option setting. So we have a name, a value, and sometimes there is also an option for that value, and we can just set that as text as well. And of course, just like that, we have a very simple settings table that we can just grab from the database and have all of our important data maybe separated. Okay, so next up then, of course, we have Scriptcase libraries and best coding practices. So let's just have a quick look at that, shall we? So back into Scriptcase. Within Scriptcase, we have available to us external as well as internal libraries. And I should also mention that we have methods within forms and grids, as well as pretty much all the other applications as well. And of course, you can add those to improve your code. So it's very important to use, for instance, functions across multiple applications within the same project. So just like using, for instance, one function to send email, you can apply that here within the external libraries, or of course within the internal libraries. Now there is a difference between the two. Now the internal libraries are used throughout the project within various applications, they function awesome. These are awesome. And the external libraries actually increases that power by allowing you to upload and integrate third-party libraries or any code that you want to add as a file. So here, for instance, we have then a library that we can create, and here we have the security library which has been added to this project. So here I can edit this, and in here I can then add my own libraries. I can add then templates for the login page. I can pretty much add anything I need into this, which then can work with my project. And of course that allows us then to integrate Scriptcase with pretty much anything. Okay, so that just then gives us so much more power within Scriptcase. Okay, so it is important, of course, to, when you add libraries, to define where it is. So for instance, here we have our Scriptcase library. These are provided to us. We have then also the public library, and then also here the project library. For the internal libraries, again, Scriptcase, public, project, and also user. Now, personally, I always add libraries into a project, and you'll see here I have here my lib, and that is then callable within, say here, my grid application. So here I can come down to programming, here I have internal libraries, and then down here I can then just select here my lib, and then that can be used within this project. Now we can of course go ahead and check that library out if there is actually anything in there, and here I have some example code. Look, so here is a function, and I can call that function get contact details with the person ID. So if I take that, for instance, and if I want to use that here within my grid application, now I have added here my lib. Now within the events, I can come in here on script init or on record, whichever is then required for your function to work. And then in here, I can then just like that use any function I have added within an internal library. Now for methods, you would essentially call them the same way. So if I add a new method down here, I could then, for instance, add here a method, say call contact detail. It's probably not the best. And then in here, I could then basically call my new function, and that would then here be called person detail. But what I want is here the person ID. So I would have my function in here, and then I still want to pass my ID in here so I can actually use that, and that I can then use in here for a value, so that I can use that value. I can then go ahead and save that, and just like that, if I wanted to, I could replicate my function here from my method and vice versa. Of course, I hope you see what I'm trying to show you here is that you can apply methods, but at the same time you can add your methods into internal libraries. Now, I should also mention here, I have just gone ahead and copied the entire function. And of course, one of the beauties of methods is that function is now irrelevant. So that entire code I had there for the if and everything else, receive that data, is irrelevant. That is no longer required. So here, again, as you see, that reduces here the code that I am required for use of various functions by using methods or even libraries. So other than the methods, internal and external libraries, well, I'm going to show you also how to use the external libraries. We do also have libraries built into Scriptcase, which provide us the functionality and capabilities of the environment. And we can use those by simply calling that library. And we just do that with the scInclude lib macro. And if you're not sure about that macro, you can of course go ahead and check here the Scriptcase documentation, and you have all of the libraries that are available. There are PHP libraries and JavaScript libraries, and of course we can use those also within any of our applications. Now, on top of that, as I mentioned, we also have our external libraries, and to use an external libraries, we simply use the scInclude library macro. And again, this macro is also available within the documentation, and you have here the scope, so which applications this macro functions in. Always pay attention to this one. Sometimes, of course, experiment. There's nothing wrong with that, and sometimes it may work, but these are the supported applications and events that you have listed here. So if it works, it will work here with this macro, sc_include_library. And you just apply that into your Scriptcase environment, and well, off you go. You have something more awesome. Okay, so talking about coding best practices before we finish up, we have global variables. It is important to use global variables, of course, within your applications, but be wary not to use too many. And if you're not too sure what a global variable is, then this would essentially be a global variable. Okay, so we have our hard full-on box brackets encompassing our global here, and well, too many of those, that could cause us some issues. Again, always taking into account lowercase. Use lowercase for your code. Here sometimes you may want to use uppercase for some of your own variables that you're using within your PHP code. That can happen, of course. It's not a big deal, but of course, if you can, try and use lowercase code, and of course, separations with maybe an underscore or whatever else you like. That will of course help to keep your code a little cleaner, as well as that will ensure that you have no issues with any compatibility with the code from Scriptcase. Okay, so it is also important that Scriptcase is a modular design, and you should also maybe think about modular design for your code. This is why we have methods, as well as internal libraries, as well as external libraries. Do keep those in mind, and of course, code and build accordingly. Now, your database settings in code, it is not recommended to keep API keys in your database. Of course, talking about coding, sometimes we hard code information, which is typically what we really do all the time. We're hard coding everything. Now, pay attention to that one. Hard coding your API keys and maybe security information and relevant data into your projects can of course happen during those initial stages, and that is also why cleaning those versions is very important. And talking about that, at some point after you're happy with your development, you will want to move that data maybe into your database. Okay, so for that, of course, you could maybe use the settings table from earlier. And again, modularization. Do, of course, keep that in mind. It is very important. Okay, and next up we have then part 4, which is then the data dictionary, application translation, and some final tips for thee. Okay, so it is important that we manage our data. And data is, again, important to Scriptcase because Scriptcase is essentially data centric. So if we have a look again at our Scriptcase environment, we have available to us the data dictionary, which is a pretty awesome tool. And this will actually save you a great deal of time. So you see I have one set up here. It's very easy to set one up. You just click here and create a new data dictionary. Once you've done that, you will have here the option to synchronize your dictionary, and then it will populate here your tables. And then once you then have synchronized your dictionary with your applications, then everything here will turn green. And with that, there is the indicator of yellow when you have made updates to your database and this no longer matches. In those cases, it may not be a big deal, okay? It's not a big deal depending if you are managing the tables and fields from here, because if I click edit here, I have the possibility of managing various properties for the fields, as well as foreign keys, min-max values, help features, and so forth. And I can add them directly into the database so that any application I generate has that data here ready and done. Of course, having your data the way you want it, and of course, much faster. Okay, so with the data dictionary in action, we can then also use the application languages, because the data dictionary adds all of those keys as language keys for the languages that we have available within our project. So we have here, first of all of our tables that we have scanned and added from our database. And here you'll see all of the language keys, and these can then be used throughout your applications within Scriptcase. You simply adjust here the language keys, and then that language key within the application will present that language. So this would then provide you with the full language capabilities of the environment. At the same time, I should note, using the language variables can sometimes help you overcome the field limitation on some of the fields within the applications. So maybe you have a 50 character limit within a title field and you may want to add 200. This is your solution. At the same time, keeping your data dictionary and application languages clean and tidy, maintained, is of course very important. It is very easy to add too many folders here, too many language keys, and all for the same thing. So do be aware of that, and of course manage accordingly. So with that, we have then pretty much covered all of our points for our options here. So there's a couple of things that I just want to cover really quickly, and that is programming in Scriptcase. So remember, Scriptcase is basically event driven. So event-based coding makes sense, right? So it's important to understand when and where to place your code, in which events, which event does what and for what. At the same time, organizing your content. For instance, distinguishing between PHP and JavaScript methods. There is again a difference between the two coding language, as well as the events that are available to them and the possibilities. Java really opens that box for you. So consider those, and consider also where you want to place your code, and again on which events. Now, when you also develop and code within Scriptcase, it doesn't matter whether you are creating applications or writing actual code, always do so with an intention, and of course intent, and that will make a world of difference. At the same time, always consider the modularization approach of Scriptcase and what is available to you, considering that you have the internal, external methods, libraries, all of it available to you, as well as many more possibilities and options, which can then really broaden that scope and possibilities within Scriptcase. Okay, so some closing tips for you all, because that is pretty much it for this video. So it is important to remember that Scriptcase is available to you. You can always come here to the chat and pretty much ask for help if you need help with your installation or pretty much anything you really need. And of course, in some cases, they may send you my way. In other cases, they will help you. It really depends on what you are looking for and what you are needing help with. Of course, if you have suggestions for the environment, always please come to the chat and let us know. And when you are starting to learn with a Scriptcase, do remember there are many examples here. You have the Scriptcase 101 and a demonstration and the live webinars that you can join, as well as courses, documentations, and more. So that will, of course, be available to you. So be sure to check that out. And, well, one last tip before I go. So using a systematic development approach will help you a great deal. So be sure to adopt a structured method when you start your project, the database, as well as the development, and again your code. This will all help you with efficiency and speed and optimization, management, and better results for you as well as your clients. So that is, of course, very important. And that is it for today. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have enjoyed today's Scriptcase best practices for developing within the environment. So thanks for watching. My name is Jamie, and of course, until the next video.